The first time I realized I might be in love with him was the exact moment I caught myself lying to his girlfriend. It wasn't a noble lie. Either it was the kind of lie that stuck to your skin like oil, the kind that made you want to scrub your own tongue clean afterward. But I said it anyway, because protecting him had always come easier than protecting myself. Ethan Calloway wasn't supposed to matter this much. He was just my best friend. The guy who crashed on my couch when his dorm room felt too cramped. The guy who drank half my coffee without asking. The guy who teased me for sketching buildings that looked more like cathedrals than student projects. He wasn't supposed to be the center of gravity in my life. And yet, there he was, orbiting closer every day. It's funny how a life can tilt on something as stupidly ordinary as a woodshop assignment. A class project. One late night. And a silence thick enough to choke on. That's all it took for everything I thought I knew about Use About Me to unravel. I was the quiet one. People knew me as the guy who didn't drink too much at parties, who smiled politely at conversations and kept his hands in his pockets like a lifeline. Architecture was safe, predictable, lines and rules that never betrayed me. Ethan. Thuff was a contradiction to everything I built. He laughed too loudly, leaned too close, lived like the world owed him something, and for some godforsaken reason, kept giving it to him. That night in the woodshop started out ordinary. Sawdust floated in the air like snow. The hum of machines lingered from earlier, and the overhead lights buzzed faintly. Ethan and I had been working side by side for hours, my hands steady with the fine cuts of our model, his shirt damp from leaning too close to the sander. He made a joke about me being too precise to be human, and I rolled my eyes, hiding the smile that threatened to betray me. "Come on, Liam," he said, tossing a wood shaving at me. "One day you'll have to admit you're secretly a robot programmed to design skyscrapers. Better than being a caveman who barely measures." I muttered, trying to focus. But when I looked up, he was closer than I realized, leaning over my shoulder, his arm brushing mine, his breath stirring the fine hairs at my neck. And for a fraction of a second, I didn't move. I didn't want to. I told myself it was nothing. Friends stood close. Friends joked. Friends didn't mean it when they pressed a little too near. But then his hand covered mine, guiding the blade as if I needed him to. His skin was warm, calloused, grounding me in a way that felt anything but friendly. "You're shaking," he said softly, almost like he was afraid to break whatever spell we'd stumbled into. And God, I was. Not from the tool. Not from the work, but from him. I pulled back. Too fast. Nearly knocking over the model. "To him, fine." I lied. He studied me for a long moment, the playful grin fading into something else. Something that scared me. Something that looked too much like he knew. I didn't sleep that night. The cruelest part about loving Ethan was that he didn't even have to try. He could walk into a room, grin that reckless grin of his, and people would orbit him like planets. He had a girlfriend, a coursey, bright-eyed art student named Harper, who wore her heart on her sleeve and adored him with the kind of purity I could never compete with. She made sense for him. She was light and laughter and color. I was well. I was the shadow in the corner. The friend who carried his textbooks when he forgot them. The one who stayed up all night editing his essays so he wouldn't fail. But even shadows can betray themselves. The second act of this unraveling came fast. cruel, and with no chance to prepare. We were in the woodshop again, of course it had to be there. Like fate was mocking me. Ethan was stressed, running his hands through his hair, cursing at the project that just wouldn't come together. I tried to help, pointing out measurements, but he snapped at me, frustration lacing his tone. Normally, I would have let it go. Normally, I would have smiled, absorbed the sting, and waited for it to pass. But something in me cracked. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the memory of his hand over mine. Maybe it was just the unbearable truth that I couldn't keep swallowing my own heart. Why do you always do this? I asked, sharper than I meant. Do what? He snapped back. Act like I'm just here to clean up your mess. Like I don't matter. My voice broke, and I hated myself for it. He froze, blinking at me like I'd just spoken in another language. Liam. The silence between us stretched, heavy and dangerous. I should have walked away. I should have laughed it off. But instead, I looked at him, really looked, and the truth clawed its way out. I can't keep pretending, Ethan. I whispered. Not when every time you touch me. I didn't finish. Couldn't. And then, like the universe had been waiting for this exact second, he closed the space between us. It wasn't gentle. Not at first. His mouth found mine like a storm, desperate and angry and full of everything we'd both buried. My hands fisted in his shirt, his pressed against my back, pulling me in like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. For one impossible, reckless moment, the world didn't exist. There was only him. But the thing about storms is they always leave wreckage. When we finally pulled apart, his eyes were wide, his chest heaving. Liam, he said, his voice ragged. We can't. And just like that, the spell shattered. He left me standing there, lips still burning, heart in pieces. That kiss was both the beginning and the end. The days that followed blurred into something unbearable. He avoided me, or worse, acted like nothing had happened. Harper noticed. Of course she wasn't stupid. She asked me once, gently, if Ethan seemed distant. I lied again, hating myself a little more. Everywhere I went, I carried the weight of that night. The taste of him. The truth I could never take back. And the gnawing question that haunted me. Did he regret it, or was he just too afraid to admit what it meant? The silence between us stretched for days. Then weeks. Ethan drifted in and out of my life like a ghost, always there. Always near. But never close enough to touch. In studio, he sat on the other side of the table, eyes down. In the cafeteria, he laughed with Harper, even when the laughter didn't quite reach his eyes. And me, I became an expert in disappearing. But you can't erase someone who lives inside your bones. It was Harper who forced the confrontation I'd been running from. She caught me outside the lecture hall, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her expression soft but unyielding. Liam, she said, what's going on with Ethan? The simple question cracked me open. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to confess the kiss, the late nights, the unbearable truth of what I felt. But instead, I lied again, weaving some excuse about deadlines and stress. She nodded, though her eyes told me she didn't believe me. What I didn't know then was that Harper wasn't just asking for herself. She was asking for Ethan too. The breaking point came one rain-soaked Friday night. I stayed late in the studio, sketching until my hands cramped, desperate to outrun the ache inside me. When I finally looked up, he was there standing in the doorway, soaked through, his hair plastered to his forehead. "You're avoiding me," he said. I laughed bitterly. "That's rich. Coming from you." He stepped inside, dripping water across the floor. His eyes locked on mine. "You think this is easy for me. You think I don't." He stopped, swallowed hard, fists clenching at his sides. "Liam, that night, don't." I cut in. My voice cracked. "Don't say it was a mistake. I can't survive hearing that from you." His face twisted, like I just punched him. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand gripping the edge of my desk. "You think I don't want you." The words hit me like lightning. Then why? My throat burned. Why pretend it didn't happen? Why leave me standing there like I was nothing? He exhaled sharply, chest rising and falling. "Because I'm terrified. I've spent my whole life knowing who I was supposed to be. The guy with the girlfriend. The guy everyone likes. Not," he broke off, his voice trembling. "Not the guy who kisses his best friend and can't stop thinking about it." I stood, the world tilting beneath me. "You don't get to say that unless you mean it." And then, before I could take it back, before I could breathe, he kissed me again. This time it wasn't a storm. It was an apology, a confession, a promise all tangled into one. His hands framed my face like I was something fragile, something worth holding. And for the first time, I let myself believe I was. But love doesn't erase consequences. Harper found out. She walked into the studio 2 days later, her eyes red but her chin high, and she saw Ethan's hand still lingering on my back. Too close to be innocent. Her silence was worse than any scream. Ethan tried to explain, but she stopped him with a raised hand. "Don't," she whispered. "Just don't." And then she turned and walked away. Ethan crumpled onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. "I ruined everything," he muttered. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that love was never ruin. But the truth was we had hurt her. And no matter how right we felt in each other's arms, that pain lingered like smoke. The weeks after were brutal. Rumors spread fast on campus, whispers trailing us like shadows. Some people laughed. Some sneered. A few avoided us entirely. But through it all, Ethan stayed. We studied together, worked side by side, shoulders brushing like it was the most natural thing in the world. And slowly, carefully, we built something real. Something neither of us could deny anymore. One night, sitting on the steps outside the Woodshop, the place that had both cursed and blessed us, finally said it. "I'm in love with you, Liam." The words were quiet, but they cracked me open in the best way. I laughed, shaky and raw, tears stinging my eyes. "You took your time." He grinned, that reckless grin that had ruined me from the start, and pulled me closer. "Worth the wait." And for the first time, I believed him. We didn't get some perfect fairy tale ending. People still talked. Harper still couldn't look at us. My parents didn't understand. His father didn't even try. But through every storm, Ethan held my hand. And in the quiet moments, in the way he looked at me when no one else was watching, in the way he whispered my name like a prayer, I found something I never thought I'd deserve. Not just love. Home. Years later, when we designed our first building together, we etched our initials into the foundation before the concrete set. It was childish, reckless, and absolutely ours. The boy I once loved in silence had become the man who stood beside me. Sawdust in his hair, laughter in his chest, and love carved into every line of our lives. And though that night in the woodshop had broken every rule I thought I had, it also gave me the one thing I'd been too afraid to dream of: a forever with him. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.